Hey everyone, Curse Deck Builder here, making our way to 10,000 decks assisted. And here we are with Mary Reed and Bonny, another Assassin's Creed commander, and a donation deck coming to us from Lexa. Lexa says, here is Mary Reed and Bonny. I think overall the deck is fine, but I would like a second set of eyes on it as with every first draft I make, just so someone can call me out if I'm being too cute with things, which is always a possibility. I am trying to stay relatively budget for this one. I know Amulet Vigor is insanely dumb in this deck, but it's a $30-$40 card right now, and with the exception of cards that I already have just from opening packs. Absolutely, we can stay within budget and take a look at the deck. The deck itself has some interesting aspects to it that I'll probably talk about, and I think this is a very, very good draft. Obviously with a few switches here and there and a few ideas that I'd like to explore a little further. But that being said, let's not wait, let's get right into it. If you'd like to take a look at the deck list we're talking about today, or if you'd like to submit your own deck list to me so that I can make a video assisting your deck, please check the video description down below. Now, Pride Month might be over, but we're always here for a pair of pirate lovers who are out to kick butt. Mary Reed and Bonny are 3 mana, 3/3 human assassin pirate in blue and red. They have haste, they tap to loot, which is draw a card, then discard a card, and they say whenever you discard an island, pirate, or vehicle card, create a tap treasure token. Fundamentally, this commander is pretty straightforward, and I do like that, and the whole idea being that as you discard cards, most likely going to be pirates or islands, we'll get the vehicles later, you will be ramping slowly with tap treasure tokens. I do appreciate the treasure tokens are tapped, and as Lexa puts it, Amulet of Vigor makes this a lot stronger due to the fact that you will get that mana right away. However, the balancing of this card is so the mana comes in tapped, and therefore you can't go crazy. So, what is the deck that we have Mary Reed and Bonny in? Well, let's do our regular kind of homework that we do whenever we look at a deck. We can see we're at 34 lands, and though this seems low, I think we don't have to go as high as, 37, as long as we cut down on a few of our higher mana cards. You see, this deck is very much so enamored with looting, so with that large amount of draw, the ability to get the lands we need is pretty accessible. And if we look over here and hit this, we can see that we've got about a 70% chance of playing 3 mana cards on curve, and I believe if we went to like 36, I think we'd be fine to maintain that mana and not worry about hitting 37, 38. That being said, it is worth noting that if every card, let's say we put this up to like 36, and then we're considering putting more lands. If every card we add is an island, that means when we discard that card, we trigger Mary and Anne, which I think is a lot more accessible than putting, I'm going to gently call not very good vehicles into the deck. Like, if Dermotaxi was an island, or a card that had the island subtype, I think it would just flat out be better because, well, Dermotaxi isn't that great. I will note that Dermotaxi does have some nice looting shenanigans, so maybe I should be talking more about something like the Belligerent. Still, something that is worth noting that putting islands into this deck is pretty free. Looking at the curve itself, I'm not in love with the fact that we're very, very high on 3 mana. As you can see, it is by far our largest group of cards, and our commander is at 3 mana as well. That being said, it's important to note that we can be playing this deck with the idea that all of these cards outside of our commander here are kind of to be thrown away, right? That we're not really going to cast the majority of them. And then with that in mind, you can just kind of eschew the mana costs or the fact these are at 3 mana. I don't agree with that way of thinking though. Something that I think is worth considering is the fact that a lot of these cards are really good, right? Like Ironcrag Pyromancer is a nice burn spell that can take creatures out. Ghost of Ramirez Di Pietro is so powerful with our plan of being able to buy back some of the cards we're discarding. Where is Broadside Bombardier is an insane card, and obviously very good with treasures. Anya's Ravager is like made for this deck. Like, these cards are very, very strong. So it's harder for me to just like go ahead and say, hey, why don't you just discard these instead of playing them? That being said, we still have the situation where our commander is much, much more important to play than any single one of these creatures. So with that in mind, I don't think the pressure's all there. Obviously, there's a few cards here that I will get back to that are here to like Shattered Perception, Circular Logic, Fiery Temper, the Madness, and Flashback cards that are meant to kind of interact with the whole discarding thing that I'll get back to in a bit. And there's a few artifacts, vehicles here that I think I would just cut these. And if you cut all of the vehicles here, going down to Brass's Tunnel Grinder, that's at least 5. If you cut Fiery Temper and Circular Logic, that goes down to 7. And going from 23 to 16, I think is a lot more reasonable. Now, I'm not saying, as I said before, you don't have to turn them all into islands, because I do have additions, and some of them are 3 mana, you know how it is. I tried really hard. We'll have to see what I put in, but I think it's still worth just cutting them. They don't have to all be islands, but it's worth considering. Looking at the rest of the deck and things that catch my eye, this is a great time to talk about the Madness in the room. Is Madness worth running in a deck like this? And I would argue generally no. So the way Madness works is that you are getting free value for discarding cards, but that's a lot more powerful in 60 card formats where you have 4 ofs, where the Madness card you tend to run is something like Blazing Root Walla, or in other formats you could be playing Basking Root Walla, right? Because of the 0 cost Madness, it's much better. Fiery Temper is almost universally seen as, let me see where it is, the closest Madness playable, because when you Madness this card, it just becomes Bolt. But I would also point out you're not playing Bolt, and I think I would just play Bolt first. Especially considering the fact that some of our discard, we do want to be discarding Pirates, Vehicles, and Islands. So when we're not doing that and we're discarding our Madness cards, we're kind of going against the plan of the deck. And I think we have more than enough, way more than enough Pirates. So we got 17 Islands, and we've got 22 Pirates, which added together is 39, which is 39% of our deck. That is how math works. So that's pretty good. I don't really think we need to be worrying about putting cards who the entire point is that if we discard these cards, we will get some value. Alchemist Greeting as well, going from a 5 mana, kill spell to at sorcery speed to a pseudo instant 2 mana deal 4. I don't think so. Flame Slash is 1 mana for 4 damage, right? Just because it's in theme doesn't mean we should be playing it, which I think Lexa was talking about when it comes to whether things are too cute. Looking through the rest of the cards, I think the pirate package, the creature package, I'm really impressed by. I think this is the strongest part, and the part of the deck that I think sticks out the most. I think if you really wanted to, you could go further into the pirate sub-theme and just have the pirates stand on their own, with Mary and Anne being there to support the deck and like fuel the deck. But even then, I think this is a really good setup. When it comes to instants and sorceries, I am a little concerned by the lack of interaction. This seems to be something that's coming in first drafts a lot these days, from a lot of different people that I see, where we kind of eschew the, I think I've used that word twice, the interaction package when we are early in the build, because we are more concerned with putting together the fun part, the functional part, the synergy part, and then later, and like, I think it's very notable when we see that the only interaction pieces are Madness cards. So these are the synergetic parts of the deck, right? So I think we just put all of that aside and we build what we want, and then we tone ourselves down and put the interaction thing. And up to you, but this is my opinion. I don't think this is best practice. I know perhaps it's easier to do, but it's better to build decks with removal in mind, right? This is a core part of our format, and it's the core part of our decks. To think of removal as an afterthought and not as a core part of the deck that we think of, for example, with curve, with card draw, with accessibility, with tutors, like when we kind of smush in interaction at the end, we kind of devalue its abilities in a deck. I don't know if I'm saying this correctly, but I think we shouldn't do it. I think when you build a deck, you should think about the removal you want to be running, and you should be purposeful in going between like 6 to 8 cards or more or less, depending on what you're going to run. And though I might suggest that this is a pseudo aggro combo deck, even then, I do think you need removal. There are a lot of cards that kind of soft shut down your deck. There are a lot of cards that can be incredibly disruptive to your graveyard, or your ability to cast multiple spells, or your ability to draw multiple cards. Like, I'm not saying, Bowmasters beat this deck, because you might not play in a group that plays Bowmasters, but any form of draw punishing can be incredibly hurtful for this deck, or any form of hard counter to your commander, right? And having just a few pieces of interaction will make a big difference here. And this is like, having access to like negate or some of the 1 mana swan songs and the like could be useful here, just as an idea. Going through artifacts, once again, honestly, if you can take out the vehicles, I think you will just do better. They don't need to be islands, but they definitely should be something else. I don't think, okay, this is going to be something I'm going to take a moment to talk about before we go into additions. Something someone commented on a previous video. They were talking about whether or not there were enough mana dorks or mana rocks. And I was reiterating this point to my wife, actually, and we were talking about this a little bit, and just the history of how the format has seen mana rocks, and that mana rocks have gone in lower and lower mana costs. Like, we used to play Solemn Simulacrum in every deck, and now we don't. And we used to play 3 mana rocks, and now we don't. And now we play 2 mana rocks. And sometimes the conversation comes up of whether or not we need to be playing mana rocks at all. And in this deck, considering that we're not playing Soul Ring, which might just be a mistake, but I think we could just cut the rest. Arcane Signet and Talisman of Creativity as our only mana rocks, I don't think they're worth playing. Just cut them. The deck is low to the ground enough. I don't really see you doing anything particularly useful by dropping a mana rock turn 2, because most likely you're just going to play a 3-drop due to the numbers of your deck on turn 3, so it doesn't change anything. Soul Ring is the only one that's kind of cute because it enables you a turn 2 commander, which we'll get back to. But otherwise, I don't really think you need the mana rocks. This is a great time to just take them out and try something new. Try to run without mana rocks. And I think if this test was done on more decks instead of just going along with the idea that, well, of course we play mana rocks, we're in Commander. If you put that logic aside and kind of think about it, I think you'd find a lot of your decks you can take out some mana rocks and perhaps make the deck flow a bit better. All right, let's go into additions. The first two are very straightforwardly methods to play your commander on turn 2. Soul Ring obviously is probably better than these two, but I wasn't sure if you were purposely not playing it. So Strike It Rich is very, very strong in a deck like this. It works nicely with Flashback, though it is kind of a mana, you're going into deficit by paying 3 to get 1, but the whole idea is that you either have other effects or you are ramping for the next turn. But for 1 mana on turn 1 to get a treasure token to play your commander turn 2, really, really good. Slightly worse for sure is Goldhound, but does the same thing. If you can throw out Goldhound turn 1, you can get a turn 2 commander. Now you might think, Cursed, am I supposed to be mulliganing into these cards? I would say probably not at this number. For context, there are certain decks that I really want a specific creature on turn 1. So this might be like my black-blue pirate deck. I want to mulligan into an evasive pirate. And I probably run upwards of 6 to 8 pirates, and I'm very happy to mulligan into these pirates because it makes the deck function. Here, we have access to about 3 cards that allow us to do this. These 2 in Soul Ring, and the Goblin with the Goblin over here with Encore, though this one is a lot harder to trigger. You might have to make a deal with it, but it is something that can potentially do this. And then if you wanted to, you could play Ragavan. This is a budget deck, so I didn't actually want to suggest this. However, if you were playing this deck without budget or you were proxying, Ragavan would be another version of this. So let's say you have about 4 versions of these cards that allow you to play your commander turn 2. Do you mulligan for them? I would say lightly. I would say if you don't have a great first hand, you can mulligan and hope to get that 1 mana ramp spell, because really Mary and Anne are very, very strong turn 2 and will do a lot. All right, moving on. 2 treasure cards that I thought were missing were Pirate's Pillage and Unexpected Windfall. Obviously, one is instant, the other is sorcery, but both cards I think are really, really good here, especially because they represent the ability to make 3 treasure tokens with your commander out and are generally just very good looting spells. They are staples for a reason, and therefore I do recommend playing them, even if they're, you know, not as fun as, for example, a Flashback or Madness card. A card that really caught my eye, Sky Swimmer Koi. Now, this card has a 3 mana variant in, it is a red, quick, oh no, I've forgotten it already. If I go back, can I find it? Yeah, Quicksmith Genius. I'm very, very happy. Quicksmith Genius is a 3 mana version of this card. They're both the same. Whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. Of course, the idea is as long as you have pirates to discard, you will make treasure. And you will go through a substantial portion of your deck. If you've ever played Anya in the Madness deck, this can set up situations like this. And I'm suggesting the Sky Swimmer because it's 4 mana. However, if you wanted, you could play both. And to be honest, there might be another effect that does something similar. I didn't look further. I didn't think this was the kind of deck that wanted to combo off so hard. But if you can land Sky Swimmer Koi, go through, you know, your opponent's turns and on end steps start drawing, discarding, you could potentially make quite a bit of mana and win the game the next turn. If you ever played Cultivating Colossus, it's very much so like that. Alright, moving forward, Idol of Oblivion feels very much so missing in this deck, just as being a 2 mana draw engine that you can get every turn because your ability to make treasure tokens is very, very accessible to you. Once again, with Idol of Oblivion, the second line is generally flavor text, but I will say, with the amount of mana you generate, it is reasonable for you to have 8 extra mana for a 10/10. Would I actually suggest you do that even if you have the mana? Probably not. The card draw is much stronger, but it is worth noting that it is something you can do. Going into equipment, I wanted a bit of an equipment sub-package here. Now, I didn't do any of the red equipment cards beyond just the equipment itself, and that is something you can consider to play because I do think it allows these strategies to be more accessible. But I really like these equipment because I want these to be either on our commander or on one of our pirates, because we really lack an ability to be meaningfully tall, and these cards will enable us to do so. The first one, and I would say the best by far, is Tarion Soul Cleaver. This is just generally very, very good. I really like Vigilance on your commander, and if we can grow them, they can hit really hard and still tap. And obviously the ability to sacrifice treasures to give +1/+1s is very good, but much more likely you're going to equip this to a creature, and then as you play your turn and as the game progresses, that creature will grow until you switch the Soul Cleaver to another creature and just spread the love that way. Just very strong card, always impressed by it. I remember this being like super, super hyped, and it ended up not being that good, mainly because Vigilance is no shadow. This card is no Shadow Spear, right? And I think it is very apparent the difference between those cards, but in a deck like this, it's still very, very good. All right. Oops. There we go. Nettlecyst, of course, is the other equipment card. It is also the 3 mana card, which is unfortunate, but it is profoundly powerful for the deck. Just being the straight up, like a construct. That's what I'm thinking of. I was thinking cranial plating, but that's not exactly what it is. By it just growing by the number of treasure tokens you have among other enchantments and artifacts, it's going to be a very, very big germ. And then, of course, as everyone knows, once the germ dies, you reattach this to something else, and you're very, very happy. So, big fan of this card. Another card that I think as a win condition should be accessible to you is Rise and Shine. The ability to use this card, after you have a lot of, treasure set up and do a very, very big attack on all your opponents, I think is very meaningful. I also think it's worth noting that it's kind of funny because the artifacts come in tapped, and this doesn't give them haste. You already intrinsically know which artifacts you can attack with and which ones you can't, which is kind of cute, but honestly, meaningless in the end. I think at the last part, you're going to hope to have upwards of 10, 12 treasures and use only your lands to tap for Overload, Rise, and Shine. And then that could represent, 40 plus damage really, really easily. And I do think that's a good way to finish the game. Oh, this was out of order. I was wondering, I was like, I had one more equipment. Dire Flail is a very interesting piece of equipment that I tend to like. The first thing I like about Dire Flail is just its main ability to be just fine as equipment. 1 mana plus 2/+0 is really, really strong. It makes me think this should be in my cube. But after you get over that early phase of it, what you can do is you can craft it. So 5 mana, exile this, exile a treasure or an artifact card from your battlefield or graveyard, and then you flip it. And Dire Blunderbuss is really, really good. I really appreciate that it keeps its equip cost. It gives +3 instead of +0. And every time you attack, this creature, you sacrifice an artifact, and then this creature deals its damage to target creature. Unlike some other cards which kind of care about the CMC or the mana value of the thing you're sacrificing, Dire Blunderbuss does not, which is very, very good because we're going to be using treasure, which have the mana cost of 0. Now, this is just per attack, but being able to do at least a bolt's worth of damage, which is probably more because most likely you have it on a 2/2 or something, to deal 5 damage to a creature on attack, just in exchange for a treasure, is really, really good. And I think you'll be very, very happy with that effect. Being able to just take out commanders, take out key pieces, or take out blockers while you attack is going to be very, very good. Now, there's a bunch of equipment I didn't suggest, but that can be worth looking into if you want to go into equipment. Namely, things I'm looking for are stuff with First Strike and Vigilance. Vigilance for your commander, First Strike for your pirates, as they tend to benefit from it because they are very, very aggressive. I'll leave it up to you to think about that, but this is a great card. Definitely play this card for sure. Moving forward, just the collection of removal. This is always the boring stuff, but Pongify, Rapid Hybridization should probably be played here. Don't get me wrong, giving your opponent's creatures is probably a little worse than just playing Lightning Bolt and Burn because you are the aggressive creature, but I think it is worth noting because both those cards remove any creature, no matter how big. But absolutely you should playing Lightning Bolt, and then beyond that, I think you're probably good. I'm not going to include Counter Magic, I'll leave that up to you, but Counter Magic could be pretty good here for protecting your board. Finally, something I think is worth saying, and maybe it's a little more expensive than I thought it was, but these MDFCs from MH3, I wonder if we can just search for that. Is there a button here that says MDFC? Probably. But I'll find them another time. Within Modern Horizons 3, we got very much so spoiled, let's say, with a series of cards that are lands on the back while being incredibly powerful, for what they are, powerful cards on the front. And I do think we're at a phase that people are not playing enough of these cards because, honestly, they are just very, very good. Are they not here? They must be in their own collection at the end then. Yes, okay, good. Then we can find them because they're the transform sheet. Yes, yes. So in blue, we have Hydroelectric Specimen and Sink into Super being very, very good. And in red, we have Sundering Eruption and Pinnacle Monk, with Eruption probably being the better card because it allows you to attack. Both of these cards can be flipped, and I believe there is a blue-red Rush of Inspiration that's a draw to discard a card at random, most likely because you don't have energy. I think you can get away with playing 3 of these, and I think a lot of commander decks would benefit from playing these double-sided cards because they do count as a land and they do have very good effects. So I very much so recommend that. And that's it for additions. Thank you so much, Lexa, for setting this deck. I think it's very, very interesting, and I think it's going to be strong. I do have a fear that Mary Reed and Bonny are probably better in the 99 of most decks, but we're not here to be the best decks, we're here to mess around and have fun. And I think for what they are, this deck is going to be very, very good as a sort of Is It Anya, which I think is a pretty good compliment towards a deck if it can be that strong. Thank you so much, and I hope you have good luck in your deck building, and happy deck building. Man, I did my best there. Okay, have fun everyone. Bye. Thank you so much for watching. This video is brought to you by viewers like you and people on my Patreon. If you'd like to send me another draft of this deck, or any deck, there is a link in the video description down below. And if you'd like to make your deck one of my donation decks I work on, there's a link there too. Finally, if you'd like to like, comment, subscribe, I would be very appreciative. It helps the channel quite a bit. Thank you, and good luck in brewing and building.